everyone, Michelle Seidling here with another episode of Food Experience Unplugged. Today we'll explore how you think, feel, and act about food. Here to help us do that is Somatic Therapist Todd Nyholm. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to be informed as new episodes become available. If you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes, please rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. As always, check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some resources as you begin your health journey. Todd Nyholm, welcome to Food Experience Unplugged.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Oh, well, we are so happy to have you as the guru of the food ladder method. So I can't wait to hear what that is all about for sure. And a somatic therapist at that. So that's all of that I can't wait to dive in and find out some details. But beforehand, will you take a moment to introduce yourself and what brought you to this point in your life and in your career?
Yeah, so my name is Todd Nyholm. And as she said, I'm a somatic therapist, which is a catch-all term for a lot of different kind of manual therapies that we do. They all have different names, and pretty soon they don't all fit on the business card, and so we need something a little shorter. So health has been in my mind ever since I was a kid because I got sick really young, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. And I really didn't get good answers until I was in my late 30s, and then it's been a few years working through with a functional medicine doctor to fix everything. But in the meantime, I learned everything I could from any culture at any time, any place that might help me feel better. And a lot of those problems were digestion, and a lot of them were food. So food was one of the first things I approached, and I tried every diet you could possibly imagine. And some worked here and there, and some didn't. And so I kind of put together one that worked for me, which works a little differently than, like, rather than using a force mechanic, like you're going to live on broccoli water for 7 months or something, you kind of reprogram yourself so it works out a little better. But over time, working through all those things and finding the right doctor, I was eventually able to figure out a lot of my own health problems. And I feel significantly better now in my 40s than I did when I was even 5 or 6, that kind of thing. So it's been a lifelong, almost obsession to figure things out. Made me really driven in that direction. So here I am.
Okay, wow. So you were sick, if I understood you correctly, you were sick up until your 30s.
Yeah, I was sick probably up until I was 41 or 42. So
Okay.
I found a doctor who could diagnose a lot of the problems that I was missing when I was
Mm,
38. And then it took us about 3 years to fix everything. So I had a whole series of infections to go through and parasites and all kinds of things to clean up. That's
mm.
probably started from a tick bite when I was 4 or something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow. Now, career-wise, did you just, as far as your somatic therapist, your other endeavors, was that ongoing as you were battling your own different illnesses?
Yeah, you bet. So, just about 18 years of doing that kind of work and just running my own little practice.
Mhm.
So I've been doing that the whole time. And there's a lot of things that I learned through those methods that I was able to work with myself. So cranial sacral was really helpful, and visceral manipulation gave me a lot of interesting tools for helping out my gut pain and digestion, headaches and things like that. And so a lot of those tools are very helpful to get me to this point where I'm not sure I would be here without them because I was
Mm.
really in trouble with some of those things. So there's a few things that really went my way so I could still be here to talk about the book with you guys now. So.
Excellent,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I'm glad that those things have worked out and you've incorporated those things into your own practice.
You bet, and I'm constantly thinking about it and working with people, and so I basically work 6, 7 days a week, with people directly, and then working on the methods that are in the book and in the next book I'm working on, and some exercises that incorporate all those things that I've put together so that I can give them to people like me who need some help and can't find it. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And you are let's see, the book is what was it? Food. Tell us the name of the book.
Yeah. Off food, why do you trouble me so much?
Okay.
Which still makes me laugh to this day when I hear it, so, which is why I
Yes.
chose it. Yeah.
Excellent. Now that book describes your food ladder method. Can you kind of walk through that?
Sure. I was trying to build something I could use every meal for myself that would incorporate some of the lessons I learned about food and then reprogram the sort of food programming that was in the back of my mind that I could carry with me and take with me. And so I made this ladder based on some other principles that fit in the whole system I put together for building health, of which there are 18. At the time when I wrote the book, I had 14. And so I made a series of
Mhm.
laddering steps. So you could sit
Okay.
down and you take step 1 and then step 2 and step 3, and they go really quickly. And after a while, you start to reprogram how you think and feel about food. So it starts to work on its own. And pretty soon you don't need to carry the book around or the ladder with you. You just kind of remember it. So, yeah.
Okay. Wow. So just kind of series of steps, just kind of looking at your perspective on food.
Yeah, and it's very much working from the inside out. So rather than like I was mentioning before, a force mechanic where you're like, I'm never going to eat anything that tastes good again, like a lot of people get stuck into. It gives you these little steps. Like one of the steps is you kind of say to yourself, I eat to nourish myself and my life. And
Hmm.
that's a nice principle to like think about right before you eat, because you might be sitting down with 4 bags of Doritos and 2 pieces of cake, and you look at it, you're like, well, maybe this isn't going to feed me or my life a lot, but maybe one piece would, and there'd be a place for that because you want to enjoy your life a little bit. So a lot of neat things
Mm.
with that. And so I try to stack them in that kind of way so it reminds you of what's important. And then it's almost like a friend talking to you, like, oh, that's right, I remember this. I was going to do this for this reason. So that keeps you from emotional eating and those kinds of things too.
Okay. So what are the rungs on the ladder? We you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I could give you a few. And I got the book right here. I made it
Sure.
small enough so you could carry it with you because that's how I use it. And so I had it with me, and there's digital versions. Let me just find. I have them all in one area here. So step one is the one I mentioned before, that I eat to nourish myself and my life. And so you start there. And then the next step, you get into your body and you ask yourself, is there space needing to be filled? Like, am I actually hungry in my body? And that'll help you realize if you're like emotionally eating or physically eating, or, what's coming together, which was a big thing for me. I think so much of my food habits came from when I was a kid and how my
Mm.
parents modeled things. And so you celebrated with food and you consoled yourself with food. And Friday night there was food and holidays there was food. And, so pretty soon you kind of lose that connection to your body. So all this
Mm.
this laddering, it relies on you getting back into your body and paying attention to yourself when you eat. And so the
Mm.
steps help you go through some of that. Um, the next one I think is your metabolism stoked. So have you done anything with your body today that helped your metabolism go? Which could be all kinds of things, walking or working out, some kind of activity in your life. Because if you're spending all
Mm.
your time, say, playing video games and watching movies on the couch, you probably need less food than if you're Michael Phelps and you're swimming in a pool 8 hours a day, that kind of thing. And so just to get you thinking about some of that. Um, some of them have to do with are you getting a lot out of your food? Has it been well prepared? Are you chewing it thoroughly? How is it put together for you and your tastes? Do you like it? It gets tough if
Mhm.
your whole diet is food that you don't like at all. That's hard to sustain. So maybe you can go like a month or two like that, but trying to go a couple years not eating anything you like is it's going to test your willpower, to say the least.
Yes.
And so the whole thing just goes along, in those ways. And some of them are like eat foods that assist digestion, assimilation, and elimination, that kind of thing, which was really useful for me with the health problems I had. So some food really seemed to help those process, and some make it worse. And that was a lot of trial and error for me. So like beef is really good for my digestion. Chicken
Mm.
is really tough. I was a vegetarian for a long time. That was very difficult on me. But for other people, it might be
Mhm.
great. And I suspect some of that has to do with where your family came from. If they've been
Mm.
eating a lot of vegetables for a long time, it probably goes well. If you come from a place where they ate, let's say, whale blubber for the last 300 years, it's probably a big transition to make to do something else.
Mm. Okay. Now, with these, are there is there a specific timeline that people go through these rungs?
No, and I very much would like people to find their own way through it, because if you can do it on your own, in your own way, in your own time, even if it takes you 2 years to work through it so that it makes a big difference for you, it'll stay with you. Where if you kind of like force it in someone else's timeline, it gives you something to push against, which I think you want to avoid, particularly
Mm.
because so many people eat emotionally, which seems to be something that people trip over a lot. So if you can find your own way through it, and even if you just started with one step, any of the 14 I had in there, and say, oh, I'm going to use this last one, which is gratitude, like using gratitude as a form of food. So you sit down and say, oh man, there are these great things that are happening for me. I got this beautiful place that I live in, or um, I have this food in front of you, whatever it might be, or things that you're excited for, or family that you have around you. And you start there before you eat. And then that kind of fills you up in a little different way too. So, but whatever
Mm.
step works, it's a great place to start.
Okay. Now, how have you incorporated these rungs on the food ladder in your own life?
So I actually carry around that list on my phone. And so when I sit down, I just look at the list and I go through it in that order. I go through it in that order because I put other things with it. So I have physical exercises that go along with the same principles. So they're all based on principles, but that works really well for me. And as I add more connections between things, that'll be useful for other people too. But I think if you just kept it with you, and you just looked at it right before you ate, and if you made it a habit, like every time you sat down, you're like, okay, you just kind of went through it. I think that'd be a good way to start. And then in the book at the beginning, I give a lot of questions and ways of thinking about things that happened in your childhood to help you break free of habits that you may have had. Like I had a client once tell me that everyone knows you have to eat a whole potato with every meal. And I was like, nobody knows that, but maybe you and your family, And so there's those little things that kind of connect like that too.
Mm. Okay. I love that connection. Now, how does the food ladder method play in building healthier habits?
So a lot of the way I put this together was inspired to help get principles that work on your mind and your emotions and your connection to yourself through food, rather than food being the direct thing. I was trying to get some other ideas in there. Namely, some of them are paying attention to yourself, being aware of yourself in this moment and what you're doing, being aware of your thought processes, being aware of your emotions. Um,
Mm,
and all the things I learned about health, particularly going back to ancient methods and modern ones and all those things, a lot of what people are doing to damage their health, there's not being aware of themselves and what they're thinking, what they're doing, what they're saying, and it's a long-term effect on their health and their life. And so everything I'm doing is somewhat aimed at getting some of those deeper things to happen at the same time. And in this case, through food, which people are often eating 2 to 6 times a day. So it's a good way to implant some of those ideas and reconnect with yourself through that particular method.
okay. So you're kind of looking at, like you were saying, looking back as to what you ate as a child, or some other method. So you work with people to kind of help them connect that to what they're doing now.
Yeah, definitely. So if people are really interested when they come to see me and when I'm talking to them at the clinic about food, I'll start there, and I'll say, I might even just say for the first time I see them every day this week, every time you eat, just get in your body, like actually feel it, see how it feels. And then when you eat, just kind of reconnect. And then maybe I'll give them one
Mm,
step to use right now so they can kind of plug it in. And then I'll ask them a little bit. So, what was it like when you were growing up with your food? How did your parents use it? Did they weaponize it against you? Did they say, you're not leaving the table until you eat all the broccoli or whatever it is? And now you hate broccoli because of that. Or maybe
mm,
your whole family, they just ate and ate and ate and you saw a lot of that. It was like their way of dealing with
mm,
life and stress. It's like, oh, stress, I eat. My family does quite a bit of that. And I do too, and probably goes back generations and generations. And so trying to find a way to get underneath that, I think is really important.
mm. Now, thinking back to your own food background,
Mhm.
those habits, what was that like for you growing up and in your earlier years, as you kind of started on your food journey, so to speak?
Sure. I think there was an interesting thing for me because I was in pain, because I was sick all the time. Food was a relief from that pain at times, because one of the
Mm,
things that could sort of trigger um, some chemicals in my brain to happen. You eat a lot of sugar, and people will do that because they feel down, because for 20 minutes they feel a little better. And I was in pain all the time. And I don't think I
mm.
realized it until I finally got better. And I had a day last year where I woke up without any pain. And I was like, whoa, is this what you're supposed to feel like? Because I never had that. So for me, there was
Mhm,
a lot of habits based on dealing with like physical and sort of mental and emotional pain from the infections I had that I used food to do with. And I saw my family do that, in terms of stress with work or with family. And so I picked some of that up from them, and then my own, problems with pain kind of brought it together. So I ate a lot of food. And so by
mhm,
the time I was in my 20s, I was getting bigger. And at one point, I was about 260. And right now, I'm about
mm,
205, 200. And so I lost that weight using my little method in there, but I couldn't get it done with anything else. And so a lot of those habits just kind of stacked up. And which is why I had to make it, because I had to find a way that I could make work. And that's why when people ask me, I always say, find a way to make it work for you, because you don't want to
mm,
get on this yo yoing thing where you're stuck all the time trying new diets that you can't make work. So,
mm.
but you can see those early habits in my life stem from, pain and watching my family and how they handled it. And so it became a crutch. And so getting rid of the need of the crutch and understanding it was huge for me.
And of turning your crutch into a motivator, so to speak.
Exactly. And a lot of what I put together, I think, has come from that. It's like desperation to figure things out. And I realized I'd stay up till 2 a.m. trying to figure out how to open up a pathway for the liver so I could get something to happen for myself. And then that translated into my clientele, which translated into the methods I made. And then I codified them, started putting them in books. And here I am. So,
Okay. Now, do you have some examples of people with whom you've worked, or others perhaps who have really used this food ladder method and really connected with food?
yeah, there's a few of my clientels who have, dropped hundreds of pounds and used it, usually in conjunction with something else they're doing. So often they're working with a trainer or something like that, particularly in those big examples when they're trying to go from 350 pounds down to 200 or something
Mhm.
like that. And so one of the things I like most about this is you could use it with all kinds of diets, because you're going from the inside
Mm,
out, and that helps you meet the diet that you might be using from the outside in. So I have some clients who have really made a significant change in their weight. Some that have used it for athletic performance and martial
mm,
arts and being ready for competitions and those kinds of things. Um, some people who use it for their yoga practice because it fit in well with the awareness they were trying to build into their body, and so that worked well. Um,
mm,
Probably most often I talk about it just trying to get people's health up, because I see a lot of people that are chronically ill. I imagine because I did, and I can relate
mm,
to them when they come in, and no, not too many people can. And so oftentimes I'll go through food to help them connect that way. And then again, it's a lot more about awareness. What can you eat that makes you feel vital? Which is another just great question. Does this food make me feel more alive, or does it make me want to go nap for a weekend, or that kind of thing. So.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So just a mixture of different areas that you're connecting people with food.
Yeah, and I really want to be able to help people from all over the place in lots of different ways, because I like that. I like the challenge of trying to find people that they have some infection that only 7 people in the world have, and they're trying to figure out how to get better. But then also people trying to deal with daily stress, or like I said, martial artists, or people at high end kind of athletics and those kinds. It's fun for me to try to apply it in different ways because it sharpens all my skills, and I can help
Mhm.
people who couldn't get help anywhere else, which I can really relate to, and so I think I can connect to them pretty well that way too.
Okay. So is it mainly physical, nutrition and exercise, or do you cover different other or cover other areas with those people as far as where what their goals are or other things?
Yeah, so there's a lot of exercises. I'm working directly with my hands and fingers, so I'm working through their body often. So I might be working through their abdomen while we're talking. I tend to
Hmm.
put a lot of emotional connections, like helping people understand where they are emotionally. Some of the ancient therapies really did an interesting job of talking about that. Acupressure and shiatsu, and some of the work connected with Ayurveda. And then I mentioned earlier, visceral manipulation does a great job of talking about that. So I end up trying to get people more aware of their emotions, what they're thinking about. Usually not directly. I'm usually not like right in their face saying, "Hey, do these things." I get them talking a little bit and try to bring things out, particularly when I'm working through their body, because there's these interesting connections when you're working through someone's tissues that'll bring out emotions as well. And so I can try to connect all those things for them in a somewhat general way, and then maybe give them some specific exercises, or maybe I'll refer them to the book so they can use that ladder in there. Just I really tailor it to whatever the person needs when they come in.
Hmm. Okay. So you're saying working through the body. What exactly does that mean?
So in this case, like if they came in to see me, um, let's say they have problems with digestion, I might work through their intestines directly into their body, and that'll bring up emotional stuff for them because they've been struggling with it for a long time. And then maybe I'll ask them what they're feeling, or what they're thinking, or what their experience was, and then we'll talk about the emotions that are connected. So in
Hmm.
acupressure, that might be grief. So grief having a lot to do with intestines and lungs, and so then I might connect those things for them, so that it's like a whole holistic way of looking at things rather than breaking it
Hmm.
down in the way modern Western medicine tends to do. So in some ways, I'm trying to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing to catch those things that get missed.
Okay. So you're actually doing, for example, acupuncture or other things,
Well, acupressure.
or
So my
acupressure, pardon
yeah,
me.
I'm using my hands, and so I might have my hands on their head the whole session, working with their skull or their neck, and so I'm really almost always working with their body at the clinic. Sometimes they'll
Okay.
come in just to talk to me, but usually I'm connecting those things and then grounding them into their body right now, which is a
Mm.
really good way to do it because people they're thinking about. Like last week, I was working with someone. She was really stressed out, and I was trying to figure it out. And I kept asking her, I'm like, "Oh, she's really, really scared about the change in power with the presidency." And so just getting her into her body right now calmed her down. Her breath changed. She was able to sleep again that night, and those kinds of things, because she was a week out, about something she couldn't do anything about, right? And that's a
Mhm.
tough thing for your emotions, which affects your health and your body. And pretty soon you're all amped up and you can't sleep and you're stressed out and you don't know what to do about it. And so getting someone into their body, and that's a great thing to do on your own. It's just like I've said it a few times, just get into your body and feel it, see what it feels like. You maybe move it around a little bit because it brings you back to this moment.
Mm. Okay. So that's kind of where the therapist area comes in your work. You're actually doing the acupressure. You're actually helping them understand where their stress points are or other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm working through their musculature and their fascial tissue, and I might be helping them with accidents and just trying to put everything together. So the actual
Mhm.
therapy side of what I'm doing as a somatic therapist, and that somatic term refers to the body. And so it's just
Mhm.
like mechanically working through things with all the other stuff I'm trying to put together.
Sure. Okay. Great. Yes, I love the combination of of the food and the actual therapy where you're helping them understand and with their stress points, with the acupressure, with other aspects of the therapy side. That's excellent. I love how you've combined the two.
Well, I had to for myself, so it all comes back to that. It really gave me
Sure.
something to refer to. I was like, oh, this works great because I had to use it myself.
Absolutely. Now, if people are just getting started, what what steps can they take to kind of understand that mind-body connection and really help to whether they're trying to alleviate stress or whatever their goals may be?
Yeah, I really think the first step is that awareness of the different parts of you working. So then your mind, your emotions, like watch your thoughts for a while. And maybe you set aside 10 minutes and get out a notebook and just write down your thoughts. And pretty soon you'll realize they're going really fast and you're missing most of them. They're almost happening habitually and like you're being thought and you're not. They're just so habitual. To stop them or to change them a little bit, you have to look at them and see them without judgment. And that's something that's important. You got to not judge yourself for thinking, maybe some bad thought about someone that made you mad or some food that you want to eat that you shouldn't or whatever it might be. You just got to somewhat non-judgmentally look at it. And that's a great place to start for all kinds of things. And with that, I would also go through an emotional kind of thing. Like, what emotion am I feeling right now? Can I define it? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? Do I feel salubrious? There's all these words we have for emotional states and feelings that most people haven't noticed because we tend to dwell on like four or five, anger and fear and jealousy. And so we miss some of the cool things, like joy and passion and enthusiasm and all kinds of things like that. And so it's good to watch that and see where you tend to sit because people will tend to have a place where, like, I tend to worry. That tends to be my negative place to go. Some people it's anger. For some people it's fear. There's a lot of interesting things, but watch where you really are. And that's a good place to start because those things will fit into what you do with food, you know. And then you can use that later on if food is your big goal. But I tend to think it's always good to start with becoming more aware of your mind and your body and your emotions and how they all fit together. And I like to talk about mind and emotions separately because we tend to like think of mind as really important and emotions this kind of annoying thing that we have to deal with. But I think you want to make them equally important, and then you'll see the connections between them, and then you'll see the connection with your body. If you're really tired, it's hard to think well. If you're really emotional, it's your body will get worn out if you're emotional in sort of a negative way, in the sense of worry or fear, because they change your chemistry and then it wears you out. Where enthusiasm will tend to give you more physical energy, and so you can start to put that together in that way too. But that all starts with awareness. And if I could give everyone one thing, it's that, put a little awareness on yourself and what you're thinking and what you're feeling.
Okay. Now, with these steps, is it all about the food, or are there with these steps? I mean, it's called the food ladder, of course, but in terms of where they are in, depending on what goals they want, do some of the rungs on the food ladder, so to speak, apply more to them than others?
Yeah, and so the rungs of the ladder actually, so I have these principles that I apply to different places in your life. And so the food ladder is just that application of them into food. But
Mm,
the idea that's behind them, you can, and I'm going to do that in other books. So I have another book that comes out in a few months that does it definitely more directly. And then I have a few that apply it into some different areas of your life. And so if you can look at it and start to track it, you can find the principle that sits behind it. So that one I mentioned about nourishing yourself, that sits on this principle of what are you grounding yourself with? Like, where does
mm,
your life grounded on? And so it's a good place in the food ladder. You see it that way, and it's applied through you're eating to nourish yourself and the life you live. And that's kind of the idea of how you ground yourself with it. So all the principles they build out into other things, although I specifically put them into food form to make it simple for people so they could use it. And then I'll connect all the different books that I'm working on. And I got some videos for exercises and things that use those in different ways. So for your mind and your body and your emotions and
mhm.
sort of spiritual health and things like that. So some of them
Okay.
are more easy to see in the food ladder, and some are a little harder because they're more direct. Like, what food are you eating? Is it cleaning your body out? That one's obviously really connected to food, but you could also think about it in in a mental way, like how are you cleaning out your mind a little bit, which might be that
Mm.
exercise I said about writing down your thoughts. Because pretty soon you see, man, I don't know if I need this thought over here. This thought doesn't seem to be helping me too much, so you could flip it and do the other side. So
Mm,
yeah.
okay. So what is on the horizon in your subsequent books? You mentioned you going through different aspects of the food ladder, or are you branching out more into other topics?
Yeah, definitely into other topics. So I said most of what I wanted to say about food in the first book. The second book
Mhm.
is definitely more philosophical, and it's pretty much done now. It needs a couple more edits, and then hopefully we'll get it out in about 3 or 4 months. And then
Mhm.
I wrote a book about recovering energy through rest and sleep. And so it's this interesting way of using your mind and your emotions to bring your energy level back up, which was such a big deal for me going through my health process. That might be book four, maybe. Because I'm trying to connect them all, and then I'm trying not to get too much stuck into food or into rest or into exercises, but
Mm,
build a whole context people can use that connect so that they can build their whole life up and become healthier and happier and more whole and all that good stuff.
okay, absolutely. So, what advice would you give for no matter where people are in their health goals or in their health journeys, as far as whether it's be with the food ladder, whether it be with awareness? What advice would you give for them, whether someone's just starting out or whether they're far along in their food goals?
Yeah, so probably depending on what you need most at the time. I put a lot of stuff in the book to kind of stimulate a lot of different kinds of awareness towards health and to yourself. And so it's a good packaged way to do that. The second thing I would say in general is I think people are really hard on themselves. And so getting back to this idea, that, hey, I really do matter. I'm important. Taking care of my health is important. How I use my mind and emotions, that's important because I matter. And I've noticed talking to a lot of people now over time, not very many people feel that way about themselves. They're a little stuck in trying to prove to other people or trying to live up to some image or
Mhm.
try to look a certain way with food in particular, those kinds of things. And in a lot of ways, that derails where you're trying to go, and that's hard on your health in lots of ways. And with your food, you end up eating like a whole cake or something because you feel bad about yourself one day because for like weeks you've been kind of pounding on yourself emotionally. So getting back to the idea, I really do matter, which you probably knew when you were a kid and kind of got beat out of you as you went through school. People were trying to get you to do certain things, and so they connected your worth to activities or to trophies or to looking this way or looking that way or being 6'4" or whatever the
Mhm.
thing is. And so I would say that's a good place to start, is starting with the idea I matter. What do I need? And then filling your needs as if you really matter. Like if I really mattered, what would I give myself right now?
Because you do matter.
Because you do. Yeah, absolutely. And even if you
Yes.
have to say it to yourself all day long until you believe it, which you might have to.
Mm.
I did for sure.
Okay. Now, how have these, not only the food ladder, but these other areas that you're delving into with your books and also with your work, how has that influenced you now that you've gotten a handle more so on your different illnesses, getting your health back to a level that you choose to? How has that influenced you with all of these different areas?
Yeah, we have this saying that health is the greatest wealth, and
Mhm.
having not had it and then having it now, and then having methods to create it when I need it in certain ways on many different levels, I legitimately think it's probably the greatest treasure that I could find. And so
Mhm.
for me, it was like, while it took me 4 decades to figure it all out and put it together in a way I could
Mhm.
use, it really is like opening up a treasure for me because my experience of life is quite a bit more beautiful and interesting and exciting, and I feel better, and I'm creating more of the things I want and the relationships I want. And so
Mhm.
it's literally life changing in the most big way that I can say. And I have to be careful how I say it so I don't sound like I'm selling snake oil or something, because it doesn't just magically happen. But having those things where you can change your experience of life in a direct way,
Mhm.
to me, that may be one of the greatest things a human being can have. So, regardless of where you are, you have a tool set to feel better now, to think better now, and to use your body
Mhm.
better now. And having to dig to figure out how to do it, to me, yeah, it's like the greatest treasure I can possibly give to somebody.
Mhm. Okay. Do you have any examples of that? How you've reconnected, your own personal journey or someone else that you've worked with?
Sure. So if I were to go back to my teenage years and the amount of pain I was in, and also the amount of mental and emotional struggles I went through, because I didn't know any of the concepts or principles for thinking in a way that made me feel good, which is kind of a big deal. A lot of people are using their mind to make themselves feel bad, emotionally bad, like they're not
Mhm.
living up to this thing, and so they feel guilty. Or someone said they should be an attorney, but instead they're being an accountant, and so they feel bad for living down their parents or whatever. And so there's these
Mhm.
things that are going on inside of us, and so I was miserable both from being sick, but also those things going on mentally and emotionally that took me a little while to figure out. Um,
Okay.
and so the experience of life, and that's tricky to sometimes say, but like if your experience of life is down low, and then all of a sudden you feel 10 times better than you did, there's
Mhm.
few things that would outweigh that in your experience of life, like just actually feeling good, thinking in ways that's life affirming for you is kind of huge. And a lot of that's in your control, significantly more than you might think. You just have to learn how to, you need the owner's manual a little bit to figure out how to do it for yourself. And so a lot of the methods I've been putting together just to help show what I've learned about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of as far as your reconnection, just kind of reflecting on your relationships or on other aspects that you've gone through.
You bet. Reflecting is good because you see how and why you did things. And then you can kind of feel like you can go back and think about, hey, I had this relationship. And then if you get in your body and see what it feels like, you're like, oh, I was really angry about X and it's still there. And when you do that, you kind of get rid of it a little bit so it's not stuck in your body. And so that'll help your body get better. And then finding principles to use that you can incorporate, like the one I mentioned about nourishing yourself. You could apply
Mhm.
that to any relationship too. Does my relationship with this person nourish me in my life? Or does it take away? Does it make me feel bad? Do I have a friend that makes me feel like I can't accomplish anything? Or do I have a friend that makes me feel like the world is my oyster and I can do anything with it? And so you're using
Mhm.
that principle of nourishing yourself all kinds of places. as opposed to damaging yourself, which would be sort of the opposite of that nourishing thing. It's
Mm,
like, in what way am I damaging myself by doing this? And is that damage worth it? So maybe that you don't want to work today, but you do it because you make money and that allows you to eat and all the good stuff that you need. And so that might be a little bit of, okay, that's the time to do it. But having a friend that makes you feel bad about yourself, or wish you had a significant other, that may
mhm,
be time to rethink and say, maybe this isn't the right relationship for me. You can go through the process of grieving it and letting it go, and then making yourself a little healthier within yourself so the next relationship nourishes you. And so you can put it together that way, and you can take that from reflecting from where you were to where you are now, and where you want to go.
mm.
But that
Okay.
nourishing concept can go through everything.
Okay. I like that idea of just, you're nourishing through, your relationships or through some stress management or other aspects.
Or how you're using your time, or what music you listen
Mm.
to, or playing with your dogs or cats. Or there's some deer that live by me, and I see them running by, and I just like look at them, and it just amazes me every time I see them. But I think most people driving down that same road miss them because they're thinking about their meeting, or they're thinking about whatever it is that they need to do that makes them miss this moment. So they're not really nourishing themselves at this time. They're kind of damaging themselves.
Okay. And you mentioned that you personally with your own previous health challenges, have you resolved all of those, or are you still kind of working on some health areas?
So we got through all the infections, and so they're all dead now. And so I'm in this rebuilding phase where I'm feeling better and better all the time. Some of those infections had a big impact on my brain, and so about
Mm.
6 weeks ago, I was looking at some olive oil, and I was like, I really want to chug that, but I don't know why. So I had a tablespoon, and I immediately started to think better. And so I think I
Mm,
figured out the thing that I was missing there, and now I'm using olive oil and flaxseed oil and MCT oil to help
mhm.
repair some of those things. The only reason it occurred to me is because I looked at the bottle and I was in my body enough to go, "Ooh, I want to chug that." I don't like the flavor, but for some reason that's really interesting to me. And so it was the
Mhm.
way my body kind of said, "Hey, you need some more of these healthy fats." But I'm
Okay.
significantly better than I was for sure.
Okay, that's amazing. I'm glad you've reflected on your own health and so many years of trying to figure that out, to figure out what you're going through and now paying it forward. That is fabulous.
I think it's the best thing I have to give.
Absolutely. Now, Todd, how can people get in contact with you? How can they get the book?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's nitality.com. So I originally called my work the Nyholm Vital Life Method, which is just my last
Mm,
name, and then that was too long. And one of the editors was like, "Hey, how about we shorten that?" And so we
mhm,
got it down to Nitality, which is just the first two letters of my last name. So like
mhm,
Nitality, Nytality. So I have a website. Um, I also use Facebook quite a lot. So Todd Nils Nyholm, that's Todd and
mm.
then Nils Nils and then Nyholm. I have a Facebook like a author's profile, and I'm active there pretty often. The book is about everywhere you can find it. So it's on Amazon and it's on the Apple Bookstore. I made an audiobook version, which is me working through it. And I think my voice lends itself well to it because it's kind of calming. So it's good for an audiobook and not so great for a party, but some of you might like that as well.
Oh, well, wonderful. We will include all of those in the show notes.
Great.
And Todd, it's been a pleasure. It's been a really amazing to understand the food ladder method a little bit and really see how you personally have applied it. And those with whom you work have really been able to refocus. So it's been great, Todd. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's my favorite thing to talk about. I enjoyed it.